Speakers Group. So massive thank you for RecWorks for organizing this meeting. This event is for us, and so they put a lot of work on this. So really big thank you to them for this. The Aspiring Women Speakers Group is a community of women in tech on a path to improve their tech speaking skills. And we have a group, we have a Slack group where we support each other, we share information, we share knowledge. I'm going to post here in the chat of this meeting the link for whoever wants to join it. And I'm also going to ask RecWorks to add this link to the recording, so people who is watching the recording can also join the group, okay? During this, this is going to be a chat, a conversation. So anytime, if you have any question, you can type your question in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and talk directly to Claire, okay? Now, let me stop sharing because I want to introduce myself. So my name is Andrew Mussap. I am a member of the Aspiring Women Speakers Group, and I like to help out with whatever I can, and especially hosting events. And today we are going to talk with Claire about public speaking, software testing, woman in tech, imposter syndrome, and anything else. It's a number section, so anything else that you want to ask Claire, okay? Claire is an engineering manager at MoneySuperMarket, based in Manchester. She has worked in a range of roles, delivered conference talks, and she mentored people. So I bet that she has lots of wisdom to share with us today. Some of the talks that Claire already delivered are the fraud squad, learning to manage imposter syndrome as a tester. She delivered this talk 3 times, so it must be very nice and good. I'm curious to watch the recording if it's available, Claire. She also talks about security. And another talk was the shy person's guide to speak up. Great for those who are looking for start or improving with public speaking. And another talk recently, now in 2021, was finding your tester voice. All around Europe, since 2017, she's been giving these talks in meetups, in conferences, testing conferences, agile testing conferences. So lots of experience, especially on public speaking, but also in security for test, agile management, mentoring. So I'm sure that we are going to have lots of interesting things here to talk about. Now, at this point, does anyone has any question? Does anyone would like to ask any question to Claire or give you an input? Okay, but anytime that you feel like, just feel free, okay, to unmute and step in. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get started. And Claire, first of all, thank you very much for being here today, to take the time to be here with us, having this conversation, and most importantly, sharing your knowledge and your experience with us, okay? You are a successful woman in tech and a role model and inspiration for some. Yes, you are. Of course you are. So, you know, I have some questions myself, and the first thing I'd like to ask is about your career path. We know that you started with sport, you worked as a QA engineer, and you were recently promoted to manager. So could you talk a bit more about this path, if you faced, I don't know, issues, some bias, being a woman in tech, and now as a manager, how you are doing? So yeah, please go ahead and share this with us.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Andrea. It's good to be here. So yeah, just to talk a bit about my career path. As you said, I started off in IT support roles kind of way back in 2002. I started at an internet startup, working in an IT support team. I say team, there was me and the IT director, and there was a lot of building PCs and network admin and using FTP servers to kind of upload information to the website and bits of Photoshop, and it's kind of a bit of everything. And it was one of those jobs where I ended up doing quite a lot of different things. The accountant left, and I ended up doing the accounts for about 6 months as well, and did bits of sales as well as the tech stuff. And being a small company, a startup, you just end up doing lots of different things. And then I moved into a kind of a software support role. I moved to Sage, who a lot of you have probably heard of in Manchester. They do accountancy software, and I moved to them as a software support technician on their phone support lines. And it was there that I kind of found out that software testing was a thing. I think it's one of those jobs that lots of people don't realize exists, and lots of people at universities that don't realize it exists, that it's a job that people can do, and it's not publicized, as well as kind of things like development and things like that. So it's so that's kind of where I became interested in that. I thought, oh, that's something that I might be quite good at, and had an interview and managed to join the team at Sage, working on their accounting products as a tester. Did that for a few years, and then moved around a few different companies in working on enterprise software, so ERP software, other financial software, and then later on security for enterprise as well. And then in 2018, I made the decision that it was time to kind of expand my skills a bit, and kind of move into some different technologies, so more web-based technologies, and just kind of expand my skill set and push my career forward. So I made the decision to kind of jump out of my comfort zone and move to MoneySuperMarket, which as a test lead there, across a couple of different teams. And I've been working as a test lead across the kind of car insurance and mobile apps and services teams since then, until this year when I was promoted to engineering manager. And the way that came about is the company were doing a bit of a kind of a change in how they structured their kind of engineering teams in order to provide kind of better support to the engineers. And so these engineering manager roles became available. It happened that I've been talking to my boss about what's next for me, what can I do? I don't want to leave. I like the company. I don't want to leave the company. What can I push myself for? I kind of always want to think about that next step. And this role was something that was going to become available. So I was really, really excited to move into that. And because I kind of realized in my test role that I really enjoyed working with people, having conversations with people, helping support people develop their careers, and so slightly moving away from the technical side of things that I've been working on. But yeah, so I started that role in July of this year, and it's been definitely a learning curve. It's been a whole new set of responsibilities and tasks and things to do. I've been really enjoying it. I work with a really, really great bunch of people. We've got our own little almost our own little kind of engineering manager little community going there, it's I feel like it's going really well so far. In terms of as a kind of how things have changed as a woman in tech, I can safely say when I very first started, it was being the only kind of woman in the team, being in my very early 20s, and kind of quite shy and not very confident at all. There was a lot of banter, and it's one of those things that you end up you kind of, at that stage of my life, I kind of ended up just trying to kind of laugh along and shrug things off, but things do make you feel uncomfortable. But I found, as in later years, it's things have definitely are definitely much better in my experience. I realize that isn't everyone's experience, but yeah, it's things have definitely changed. I feel like there's a lot more recognition of the struggles, what it's like to be a woman in tech, and there's a lot more kind of opportunities becoming available, that people are talking about things, you know, the problems and struggles and the awareness of you know, what people go through, not just women either, kind of lots of different minorities. And yeah, so it's definitely been an interesting path so far. I've got to work with so many smart, fantastic people along the way, some of whom are on this call, and so it's but yeah, I'm always excited to see what comes next.
Brilliant. Yeah, you know, I thought very interesting, as right in the beginning you said that, you know, I worked with tests. Many people don't even know that this is a thing. And this is incredible because I am a technical writer. I never worked with tests, but just writing the documentation, you know, so I at least in my current role, I don't have access. I don't use the product. I don't test it. I work with a process called Docs as Code, where the engineers, CMS, they create, they suggest changes to the documentation, and I have to believe them. I review, there's a lot of work to do, but I don't go to the product and test if the steps are correct. And sometimes I get feedback, you know, I don't know, maybe there is a step missing in the documentation, maybe the one comment is not to work, things like this. I get the feedback because, of course, I am the responsible for the documentation. And then I have to go back to the engineering team, but I know that some of these issues, maybe the fault was in the test process, you know, because maybe something was missing, or you know, the course of knowledge, because engineers, they have everything so clear and so easy in their minds. When they contribute to the documentation, maybe they miss a step, a tiny thing but that makes the difference. So yeah, it's so important, you know, the part of the test, as important as the development of the product, because if you know, if you deliver something that has a fault, who knows the type of issue that can come up from that, right? So I loved that you said that, and yeah, it would be great if more companies had more awareness and invested more in the QA team, because oh gosh, it's so important, right? Does anyone has a question at this point? Guys, just please, you know, go ahead. Because I sometimes I feel afraid that I speak so much that I'm not giving people an opportunity. So I try to give some pauses just in case someone wants to step in.
All right, I'll give you a curveball, Claire, because I'm nice like that. What are your thoughts on having less of a division between development and testing? Because, you know, you and I have both worked in a bunch of different places and together, and we've worked in places where you're developers and you're testers. And I think we've both also worked in places where developing and testing is a much more, not integrated, that's not the right word, but merged role. What do you see as the advantages and disadvantages of those approaches?
I think I think bringing together the kind of development and test is a good thing in a lot of contexts, in my view. I mean, that's not always 100% of the time going to be the case, but yeah. I think being able to, and this is something we're kind of trying to kind of do a bit more of at MoneySuperMarket. Now, something a lot of places are doing, moving towards this more kind of quality engineering kind of culture, is actually having kind of testers and QAs, whatever you call them, as a kind of a sort of a quality, almost as a quality coach, helping coach the people on the team. So that could be developers and whoever else in the kind of testing and quality mindset, getting them thinking about the testing up front and whilst they're coding, and pairing and mobbing with the developers, and discussing those test scenarios. So you've got less of this kind of handoff to test and this kind of distinct line between the two.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, and some companies have you know, the way they've interpreted that is, well, we don't need our testers and we can get rid of them now, the developers know everything. But actually just having that mindset, person with that mindset in the team, you know, even if they're not kind of hands-on testing the products, just kind of, you know, instilling good practices, good agile practices, good test practices in the team around test automation and, you know, manual testing if that's what people are doing, you know, exploratory testing, and any, you know, anything else, making sure that the team are thinking about all these things. So I think kind of bringing those roles kind of closer together is a good thing, because ultimately it's kind of doing those things earlier makes it kind of less expensive, and you know, instills good habits in the team. We can turn things around faster, we're getting faster feedback to get, you know, get things out the door. We're not waiting till the very end of a process to go, wait a minute, we've developed this all wrong and it also needs to go back to the beginning. So that's my view on it.
No, I think that's great. And I think you also touched on arguably the most important part for me, and that's the mindset, because you can learn skills. Skills are kind of easy, really. You can learn them. But mindsets are much harder, and having people in the team that've got that mindset, much like, you know, technical writing. You heard Andrew say she's a technical writer as well. You know, I've done technical writing. It's a different mindset. And when you bring those mindsets together, I think that's where the real power lies. Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's something we're trying to do at Gear for Music at the moment, trying to work more collaboratively with our developers. We're seeing a lot of success where testers are pairing with developers and doing paired testing sessions. Yeah, and it's kind of getting rid of that testers being the gatekeeper of quality, and sharing the ownership of quality, and it's working really well for us, but we're still right at the beginning of our path. So yeah, kind of looking forward to seeing how that progresses. But I absolutely agree with Claire, that was, yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Amy.
Yeah, great. I think, you know, we just said some keywords here: mindset, collaboration, and awareness, because I think that maybe many developers alone by themselves, they just don't know. It's not they don't. It's not that they mean it. They just don't know how the importance, how the QA, you know, the tests, how they can improve the quality of the product, and of course the customer experience and satisfaction. Because in general, us people who are in a very technical role and don't have access to customer, they don't get feedback. You know, they don't know. It's easy, you be there in your computer developing, but when you ship your features, your software, you don't know what happened there. So having this collaboration and creating this awareness, I think that, as Amy just said, probably, I believe that should improve the process and the product and the customer satisfaction a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've worked with a lot of developers who are absolutely fantastic, who have a fantastic testing mindset, are really good at testing in their own work, are really good at testing other people's work. So yeah, I try not to look at it as a kind of developers kind of don't know, but because there are so many that are really fantastic. But yeah, it's definitely, I see it definitely beneficial as having that role in a team.
Great. There's just one more thing that I would like to get a hook in your original answer, is that before this meeting, Claire and I were talking about going back to the office because of the COVID, quarantine, many people still working from home. For example, myself, I'm still working from home every day. Claire said that she's slowly going back to the office. What I was going to ask you, Claire, is that you changed the role right in the middle of the pandemic to a management role, which I think it's more for managers. I don't know, I think it's even more, it's better if they can see, be with the team. And so when you changed it, when did you start going back to how was this transition being online? That's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah, I mean, it's been, I feel like it's not been any more difficult than the rest of the kind of the whole kind of lockdown and working at home period. It's been, yeah, I think it's just had to kind of make the best of the, we've got the technology to be able to communicate with people. So we use, using Teams at MoneySuperMarket, and scheduling kind of really regular one-to-one sessions with the people that I'm managing. I've gone from managing only very few people to managing quite a lot now. So just making sure we're having those regular sessions, keeping in touch with people, constant kind of checking in with them to see how they are. Obviously, it's been fantastic when we have been able to get into the office. So I've been going in a couple of days a week for the last couple of months, and then before that I was kind of going in one day a week, for most of this year anyway. But yeah, and so it's been great to see people in the office and chat to them face to face, people that I've not met before, and kind of start to kind of build that kind of relationship with them, and it's been wonderful to be able to do that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's been okay being able to do it online, and I think I feels like kind of everyone's just used to it now. It's not, I guess, necessarily the ideal, what I would have kind of chosen, but it's worked well so far. It's, found it kind of reasonably easy to communicate with people, and yeah, it's been so yeah, I've not found it too bad making that transition remotely. I can imagine for people who have started a complete new job at a new company and had to kind of build relationships from scratch, and I suspect those people have probably struggled infinitely more than I. So I admire anybody who's done that in this kind of, in the last 18 months to 2 years or so, whilst we've been under some of these restrictions, because that must have been incredibly difficult.
Yeah, you're right. I think that, because you were in the company already, you kind of knew people. It's not the same, but you find your way around. And I think it depends a lot about the personality. Although from what I read, everything I read, things about you talk about being shy, the imposters, and we are going to talk about this later. I was going to say that if you're not shy, if you're very communicative, it shouldn't be a problem, but it doesn't seem that you are. I don't know. Okay, we are going to get there. Okay. But at this moment, I wanted to talk about public speaking. Because you delivered, we saw that you delivered talks in conferences, meetups, etc. So, and this is a hot topic, especially in our group, aspiring women speakers. There are so many, especially women, with so many interesting things to say, to share, but sometimes we don't know where to start. And even when we learn where to start, we still feel like super anxious, And we're like, oh my gosh, should I do it? Am I able to do it? I'm so nervous. How can I speak in public? So could you share this experience with us? Like, how did you start? How hard, if it was hard, it was? How are you today, now that you have more experience? Do you feel more comfortable? Is it more easier today? What are your hacks for people who are starting to control the nerves? Could you please talk about this?
Sure, yeah. So in terms of how I got started, I attended a conference back in, I think it was 2015. It was in Brighton, as a software testing conference called Test Bash. And I met the woman who was she's the founder of the Ministry of Testing, and she set up those conferences, a lady called Rosie Sherry. She's on Twitter, and she does a whole load of stuff around communities and things now. She's really interesting to follow on Twitter, but she kind of set this whole company and all these events up, and I was chatting to her about kind of, and she said, oh, would you ever consider speaking at something like this? And I'm kind of like, oh, no, can never, I'm never going to be, I could never get up there and talk in front of all those people or do anything like that. And later on, after I'd got back from the conference, she put a call out for people to do some writing for the Ministry of Testing website. And so I thought, well, I'm not a speaker, but I could have a go at doing some writing. I'm not a writer either, but I can do some writing for their website, write some, they had a pipeline of ideas. So can we do some, write some blogs, some articles on various testing topics? And so I did a few of those, and they went down really well, and that kind of helped me kind of get in touch with various members of the testing community, because people would message me to ask questions about things I'd written. And I kind of got myself onto Twitter and started kind of interacting with with some people from the community and having some really good conversations, and that led to kind of being invited to a couple of events, so peer conferences, which if you've not been to a peer conference, it's a kind of it was a multi-day kind of event over a weekend, being able to deep dive into different ideas and really kind of interrogate each other about our different, we'd all present a talk and then you can deep dive into those ideas. It was quite an intense kind of weekend. And there was a talk at that one I went to in Liverpool by he's a guy called Jit Gusai. He works at the BBC as a tester on iPlayer, and he did a talk about kind of sitting on the bus going to work one day and thinking about all these these millionaire kind of tech founders in Silicon Valley and what they were doing at this point, and thinking what am I doing now, what am I doing with my life, and what could I be doing. And it kind of sort of inspired me to think, well, I'm just going to go for it, and I'm just going to submit a talk to a conference, and whatever happens happens. And I submitted a talk about imposter syndrome because it was something I'd always struggled with, and I thought, well, the best thing, if I'm going to do a talk, the best thing to talk about is something that I know, which is me and my experience. And it was really well received. It was well reviewed and got accepted for the conference. And then I did a few practice runs, a couple of internal company events and meetups, and then delivered that talk at Test Bash Manchester in 2017. I actually had the option to go to Test Bash Philadelphia and turned it down for Manchester, and I don't think my husband has ever quite forgiven me for not choosing to go to Philadelphia for free, which he was like, oh, I would have loved to go there. But yeah, and so that was kind of the first big talk I did, and it was very, very nerve-wracking. And even though I've done a few now, every time before I do something, public speaking, even something like this, I get the jitters and get quite anxious. But I think that's kind of normal. You kind of agree to do these things, and then you think, why the hell have I decided to do this? This was a terrible idea. What am I thinking? And I think my kind of tips for being able to deal with some of these nerves is just kind of prepare as much. Obviously for something like this it's difficult, but for a proper talk, kind of rehearsing as much in advance as you can, being as comfortable with your material as possible. Know that you talk about something that if you're talking about something that about, that's your experience, people can't really argue with that. So it's what you know best. And being able to, when I was in a room talking to 250 people, finding those friendly faces to focus on. So the people that I know, the host of the conference, who is actually Amy, I think Amy works for Lee Rathbone, who was the host of the conference at Test Bash Manchester when I spoke there. He prepared us really, really well, introduced himself. Is there anything you need? Really kind of get to know the host. The host can make a massive difference to how a talk succeeds and how comfortable the speaker feels. So that made a massive difference. And yeah, getting those kind of reactions from the audience, so finding those friendly faces to look at. And I think it's always the build up to it is worse than actually doing it. So my talk on that occasion was the penultimate talk of the day, right before the superstar final keynote speaker of the day. And so I was very nervous, but once I actually kind of got into the flow of speaking, and if you watch a recording of the talk, I think you can see that I am really nervous to begin with, and I think I even say I'm really nervous, but you kind of get into your flow a bit more. And the thing is, everybody, people aren't sat there wanting you to fail, they're wanting you to succeed, and they want to hear what you've got to say, and you're up there because you've hopefully got something interesting to say. So it's kind of trying to bear those things in mind and just be as prepared as possible. And some people like to have their notes with them, and sometimes you'll go to a conference and then there'll be nowhere to put your laptop, and suddenly you'll realize you've got to kind of do it all from memory, which is quite tricky. But yeah, kind of knowing what the setup is in advance can make a big difference as well. Obviously with remote events, it's a little bit easier, because when I gave a talk at a Romanian testing conference earlier this year, and because it was remote, I could just have my notes on my other laptop like right next to me. So that was it. You can kind of like refer to them much easier. So remote events can almost be, even though you don't necessarily get that same interaction, it's yeah, they can be a bit easier. So so yeah, they're my kind of tips, I guess, for managing nerves. I still get nervous. I think everybody gets nervous.
That's what I wanted to know, because, you know, we tend to think that people who have more experience, oh, now maybe it's easier for them. They don't get nervous anymore because they're so used to it. But maybe the level of nervousness is less. It's not the same.
Yeah. The more you do it. Sorry.
Sorry, I have a theory on that one. I think we all get just as nervous. I don't think the nervous level changes. I think people who've done a bit of public speaking, they're more experienced public speakers, just better at dealing with it, better at channeling it, better at using it to their advantage. I think certainly that's been my experience. I still get just as nervous, but I'm better at dealing with it now. I know how to deal with it. I know that I need to do some physical exercise before I get up and give a talk, otherwise I'm going to be like so you know.
Ellen, do you do physical exercise before you're talking?
Yeah, I do press-ups.
Oh, nice.
I have to get all the crazy out before I do a talk.
That's brilliant. I like that.
Press-ups are amazing because they're exhausting.
Exactly, and when you're too exhausted, you get less nervous because
if you think your body's just giving you a massive shot of adrenaline, you can put that to good use.
Oh, nice.
Might try that one.
I'm trying to try this. A good tip.
Honestly, when it goes back to in-person conferences, you know, I'm going to be walking up to the stage and I'm going to be stopping halfway to do some press-ups, or I'm going to be in the toilet doing the press-ups beforehand.
Wow, never thought about this. People say that they do breath exercise.
And that does not work for me.
Stretching, but not physical exercise.
Physical exercise
like
is the way forward. Nice. Get the crazy out.
It makes sense though, doesn't it?
Yep.
Absolutely makes sense.
Yeah. So look, super tips for people who want to start or improve public speaking. Rehearsal, practice, of course. Know your topic, of course, prepare, learn, practice, but also exercise before you go to the stage.
If it works for you.
If it works for you, exactly. Yeah, I know. Yeah, in fairness, I was going to ask Claire a question, but I think you already answered in your general answer. I was going to ask you about the topic, if you have some preference, but you said to talk about your experience, things that you like. So I think that's it, isn't it? For example, if I want to start with public speak, you know, what should I talk about?
So yeah, I mean, I'd recommend starting to talk with, you know, kind of remove as many things as possible that could either go wrong or make you nervous. So if you should talk about something that you're comfortable with, so which is yourself or something that you have worked on, something that you know quite well, some you know, a challenge perhaps that you've had. I did some small talks at meetups to begin with, like Liverpool Tester Gathering, Manchester Tester Gathering, just getting up and doing a lightning talk even about, you know, maybe a problem that you've recently worked on, or something that you've recently discovered, or something that you know, a lot more people are talking about, you know, mental health. Not everyone's comfortable with getting up and talking about those kind of things, or your feelings about things like imposter syndrome or whatever. You know, that's, you know, getting up and talking about something that you know, and starting small. So I couldn't have gone up there and done a kind of half-hour talk from, you know, just from the word go. It was kind of building up by doing these kind of small meetup talks, doing some lightning talks at meetups, and going into kind of little kind of company events. Some companies run their own internal like tech conferences or tech events, and going into those and being able to contribute to that kind of thing. So yeah, I recommend that kind of, start small, start with something that you're really comfortable with, and yeah, go from there. Really, just build it up and keep practicing and build it up. That's what I did, and that worked for me. There are some people that don't get any nerves, that are quite happy to take a topic that they don't really know that well, learn about it, and then go and talk about it kind of the next week. I admire those people, they're awesome, but I couldn't do that. So yeah, anyway, that's what worked for me.
Yeah, nice. I always thought that, I joined, the way I got to the Aspire Woman Speaker was via the London Java community.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not a developer. I don't know anything about Java.
Mm-hmm.
And I always struggled to find a topic to talk about, because I was like, what can I, I'm not a programmer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know Java. What could I talk about to these Java people,
Mm-hmm.
And it was really nice join this group, because we discussed this a lot, topics, because not everybody is a developer. Not everybody can talk about software development. And what I learned is that, in fact, even developers, sometimes they want to hear about something else.
They do, yeah. Otherwise it turns into an echo chamber of we're all talking about the same thing and we all think about the same things. So it's having those kind of different people come in, so for example, if you think about tester meetups, or getting developers or DevOps engineers or technical writers or UX people coming in and talking about how they interact with developers and how a bit about their role, that is really, that can be incredibly useful and help really kind of break down those silos, build relationships between teams. And it's good to hear from different people. And I know that a lot of kind of conferences, testing conferences that I've been to, and they're starting to look at setting up for next year, they're looking for something different. They're not just looking for the same people talking about the same things all the time. So yeah, and being able to thinking about, even if you think a topic's been done before, being able to put your own spin on it as well, and that's fine. Everyone has their own experience and their own angle on something. So even if you think something is, somebody has spoken about this before, or everyone knows about this, but well, they don't know your experience of it. So even then, talking about something that you feel that everybody knows about can still be a good thing.
Yeah, it was great hearing that, because every time I think about talking about something, I feel like, oh, but everybody knows that. But it's not like that, right?
Yeah.
There's always something new, something from your experience that could, help, or even open ideas, open a conversation with other people. Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Claire. There is one more important topic that I want to cover before we go, which is about the imposter syndrome. I was first, let me tell, in case someone doesn't know, it's something that involves the imposter syndrome that we talk so much about. It's something that involves feeling of self-doubt and personal incompetence, and that persists, despite your education, experience, and accomplishment. So, and just this morning, I was reading an article that was saying that there are many research in this area, and although this phenomenon it shows up more often in women and people of color, or any group who generally are less have less representation in professional environment. But in fairness, it can affect anyone. Even men, it doesn't matter your professional, your level of experience, from graduate students to top executives. So it's something that I think that we really should talk about, trying to understand more, share our experience, like how it affected us, and more importantly, how we are overcoming it. Because maybe, sometimes it's hard to find help reading an article or watching a talk, but when you talk with your peers, your colleagues, it might make it easier. So, Claire, you said yourself, I read in the invitation, that you suffered let's say if I can put like this, with the imposter syndrome. It was something that, you know, took a toll. Could you please, if you don't mind, talk more about this, how it impacted, you know, maybe your career, yourself, and what do you do, you know, to overcome, how do you find help to overcome this?
Yeah, I think for quite a long time with the imposter syndrome, for a start, I didn't even know what it was for quite a while, which I think is the case for quite a lot of people. I know when I did that talk, so many people were kind of like, oh my God, I didn't know this was a thing. But yeah, I think I'd read it in, I can't remember which newspaper it was, I'd read about it, and you kind of, it's almost a light goes on. You're like, oh my God, this is how I feel. I feel like I'm really rubbish at my job, and everyone's going to discover how crap I am, and I'm going to kind of get discovered and sacked, and it's going to be awful. And yeah, that you kind of don't realize that that's a thing, and then you realize it is. And I was affected by it for quite a long time, for most of my kind of testing career, most of my career, to be honest with you. And kind of that feeling that, oh, you know, I'm not doing a very good job, and everyone's going to realize that I in fact don't know what I'm doing. And then you kind of realize that everyone feels a little bit like that, at least sometimes. And yeah, I think it's one of the things that I talked about when I did the talk is in terms of overcoming it, was starting to push myself out of my comfort zone. So I think the actual act of getting into some of that writing and speaking and pushing myself to do things that I wouldn't normally have done, because it's like you said before, I'm quite a shy person. I was like one of these children who will never say boo to a goose. I'm always been very quiet, and you know, sit at the back of the room and not really want to kind of contribute very much, for fear of being wrong, which is a big fear. You know, obviously there is nothing worse than being wrong on the internet, you know, on Twitter or something like that. It's that kind of fear of failure, but also you kind of get this fear of success as well, because you're kind of like, well, if I'm successful and I get promoted, then even more people will discover that I in fact I don't know what I'm doing. And but I think just starting to push myself out of my comfort zone, doing some of that writing, doing some of those talks, getting constructive feedback on things, pushing myself to take on responsibility that I didn't have before. I'd always kind of held myself back from moving into management roles out of this fear that I wouldn't be able to do it. And I think kind of taking those steps to do things, you know, push myself and do things that I would not have done normally, that has really, really helped, because it's made me realize that I can do some of those things. And you know, and yeah, I won't always get it right, and I'll fail sometimes, but it's not, you know, failure is how we learn. It's not necessarily a bad thing. And I've started to take more of an approach that, you know, I'd rather give it a go and then regret not doing it. And I think yeah, so I'm not saying I've certainly not overcome it. I definitely still feel it, you know, sometimes, but not as much as I did. I think before, you know, in previous roles, I would have sat there kind of all day, every day, just feeling just horrendous and not at all confident, and like I was just generally kind of rubbish at my job. But no matter how much somebody would reassure me, I would never believe it. But it was, I think, since taking these steps to push myself out my comfort zone, that's made a big difference to my kind of level of confidence, and being able to even kind of do something like this. It's not something that I would ever have considered doing in a previous life. So yeah, I think that's a good thing. Kind of also bearing in mind, you know, recognizing all the positive things, like positive feedback, even something really simple like keeping an email folder of good feedback and emails of, you know, anything that positive that somebody sent you that you can reflect on and remind you of, you know, your achievements and things like that. That is, I find, is like you can give you a bit of a boost. So yeah, and remembering that kind of everyone is, not absolutely everyone, but everyone, is likely to feel like this at some point. Everyone's starting a new role and doesn't know what you're doing, because that's what happens when you start something new. You don't know everything, and you learn as you go along, and it doesn't mean you're not an imposter. You're just new at what you do. And the thing is, there are so many people on the internet. If you're on Twitter, there's like endless discussions about, especially in the testing community, about like vocabulary and all sorts of things. People go round and round in circles and end up in massive arguments about what are fairly trivial things, to be honest with you. And you can end up feeling like, oh my God, all these people have all these opinions and know all this stuff, and I don't know all of this stuff. And a lot of it's just, just because they're out there spouting off all these things doesn't mean that they know more than you do. They're just more willing to shout about it on the internet than you are. So it's so yeah, it can, that comparison, comparison is the thief of joy. I think that it's kind of worth bearing in mind, comparing yourself to other people. And I now try and kind of use other people to inspire me, instead of going, well, they're the same age as me and they're running the company and doing this, that and the other. But it's it's just trying to kind of keep things a bit in perspective. And yeah.
That was excellent in the end when you said, instead of comparing myself with people, no, I use them to inspire me. Oh gosh, this was excellent, because that's something that we tend to do. And Ellen just posted something in the chat that I was thinking of, that we tend to focus on what we did that was bad or not too good, and we keep forgetting about the good things, the success. We forget to celebrate our success. So I know that you and Hallie give this tip, that you say that you take screenshots, you save good feedback. That's great, because it's a reminder. But also you said that we tend to forget, right, the positive, good feedback, and just focus. I think this is our human beings thing. I feel the same. I relate, every time that the group asks for a host and I put myself up, and then when I say, great, Andrea, it's up to you, and I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? Because every time when I watch the record, I was like, oh my, I didn't do good. I don't know, I didn't flow, I didn't say everything perfectly. I only, it's funny, because when I watch the records, the only thing I can see was what I did, what did I do wrong. I forget to look, the good thing that I improved from the first time. Even if it's just a little tiny, but there is some improvement there. But I keep forgetting to see this. But that's, as you said, we should not allow this to prevent us to move forward. And in this matter, I think that having a group, having people to support you is very important, because if you are alone, you probably won't find the strength to go forward. So Claire, thank you very much for sharing this.
All right.
For the tips. Ellen, Amy, Robbie, do you want to say something about this?
I was just going to say, it's very strange, isn't it, how something bad happens can absolutely wipe that slate of all those things you've achieved away. And I'm terrible for beating myself up about little things that go wrong. So I think having that point of reference, like where you've accumulated all of your good feedback and your achievements, is it's a really good idea. Definitely going to take that on board.
I think the bad stuff, that's what kind of provokes the kind of strongest emotions, isn't it? So that's why that's the stuff that we remember, because that's the bit that makes us go, oh my God. Whereas the positive stuff, you kind of go, oh, that's nice, but it's not what it provokes that strong emotional reaction. So it's definitely good to kind of keep reminding ourselves of all the good things.
I thought the suggestion was actually really cheesy when I first heard it, and I was like, I'm not doing that, and I totally do it now. I have a folder in my email, and I'm not saying what it's called because there's got a swear word in it, but it starts with swear word. Cool stuff I've done, and you can just or I just put everything. If anybody sends me a nice email, or if I get a nice message on Slack, or somebody sends me a nice Twitter message, or someone says some content helped them, I screenshot it and I email it to myself like a sado. And then when I'm feeling down, or when that slate gets wiped clean, to your point, Amy, I just go back and I read it and I put all that stuff back.
That's an excellent idea. I'm definitely going to start to do this, because sometimes you read a Twitter, you read something, a feedback, but if you don't actually keep it in a very nice and secure place, it's going to be lost.
It's just a passing moment if you don't record it, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll definitely start recording it, because it really helps you with your morale,
Yeah.
Look, guys, it's incredible. I thought that we wouldn't have material for half an hour meeting, and we have almost an hour now, but this was incredible. I wanted to thank especially you, Clary. Thank you very much. And of course, Amy and Ellen and everybody here in the meeting. Thank you very much for your time, for your input, for being here, sharing experience today. This was great, and we should definitely do this more times.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you so much, and thank you to particularly to Amy and Helen for interacting, and yes, obviously I will chat to you both outside of this, I'm sure. But yeah, Andrea, thank you very much for hosting, and you did a great job too. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to keep this part of the recording.
There you go. Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you, guys. So
Thanks, guys. This has been brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Amy. Bye, everyone. Bye.